Attention, humans! You will listen to this podcast. Fail to comply, and you will be exterminated. Secure your TARDIS and prepare to join Super Geeks.
Hello, everyone. Fresh from the bushes. You are here for the Reaction Who Episode 3, the special Doctor Who reaction thing that we're doing on the side from our regular podcast. And joining me today, as usual, is Mr. Carlos Pedraza. How you doing, Carlos?
Great to be here, and actually not as usual because this is the first time I've done the Super Who broadcast, so it's new for me.
Oh, I like Super.
And I'm glad to be here, of course.
Son, why didn't we see Super Who? Reaction Who works too, though. But anyways, okay, great. And son, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Did you say you say Super Who?
Yeah, he said Super Who. I thought
that's what I said. Yeah.
Super. Kinda...
I'm pretty sure that's a one of those kids shows on Nickelodeon or Disney.
That's Super Y. I can speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you, parent of children.
Yes, this is
makes sense. Yep.
This is what happens when you've got three kids that are all born within 18 months of each other. You get real familiar with the Nick and Disney catalog. So,
And joining us live from the bushes is Shawn O'Halloran. How are you doing, Shawn?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. I had a very eventful week with Halloween and the kids and everything that's going on. But yeah, good stuff, man. Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's just jump into it. This time, we're going to be talking about the last episode that came out, episode 3 of series 11, or season 11, whichever way you want to put it, of Doctor Who, called Rosa. And I went on about my non-spoiler opinions of it on the regular podcast last time, and I'll probably go last because I want to hear what you guys have to say. But why don't we start with Carlos? And what did you think, Carlos?
Well, it's been a while since I've seen Vincent and the Doctor, so I don't feel like I'm in a good position to compare the two. But I certainly found it to be a powerful episode. The actor they found to play Rosa Parks, I thought knocked it out of the park. She was amazing. I think the thing that probably struck me the most about the episode was really sort of the atmosphere of constant danger that existed in the South back in the 50s. And it's weird to think that that's America, but it was for a really long time. And seeing it, the contrast that you see these modern characters as some of the things that, while racism still exists in the 21st century, the sort of overtness of it and the danger behind it that it represented to people of color in the 50s in the South was really powerfully portrayed, I thought, in this episode.
What would you give it if you had to, from 1 to 10? 10 being, of course, the best of the best.
Well, I made the mistake of reading another review that was not happy with this episode, mostly because they didn't like the villain, and I would have liked to know a little bit more about the villain, what his motivations were.
I think they were just going for space Nazi just to fit the theme.
Yeah, but that just felt a little cartoonish to me.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll never see him again, but I actually think...
Was this
I actually think
you read? I'm curious, because it's starting to sound like...
Like what? Your review?
Yeah, it's very similar. I mean, I made some, I even used the phrase cartoonish. So.
Oh, really?
I did, but I wasn't really.
Your review, so.
I wasn't really. It was my review is very mini, but I wasn't really talking about the space Nazi guy so much as a lot of things about the other. But go on, I want to hear your take on this more. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well, I'm basically done. I mean, just I think that the lack of a well drawn villain. I felt like they had like a first draft of a good villain, but never fully fleshed him out. That would have been cool. The performances, of course, by everyone were just fantastic. I thought I thought everyone's acting was really great in this episode. But yeah, I feel like the villain in this episode was a real flaw in what could have otherwise have been a really standout episode.
I guess it would just be easier to go down the line. I guess I'll go next. Mine's not going to be a long diatribe, anyways. I wrote notes just to condense it, so I wouldn't go.
It's like the McLaughlin group of geeks. I like it. Next issue.
Well, some of the things that, as you guys know, I still stand by. I may have notched down saying it's the best all-time Doctor Who episode, but it is definitely up there. But some of the things I hadn't thought of before that are things like. I was watching a reaction video with this. I can't say African American because she was British. So she was a black woman and her kids, and she was using this episode to educate them. And it was so awesome to watch because they were little kids and they're asking questions. She's explaining that that's the way it was back then. And then when the doctor had to try to make Graham not try to prevent her from getting removed, that Graham was heartbroken that they were sucked into being part of the narrative that they had to let something awful happen, or history wouldn't be. They had to make sure that happened, is what I should say, and that really made him and the doctor just, you could see from the facial expressions, the acting was very powerful by just their looks on their faces rather than so much what they were saying, and so this woman's like educating her kids, and the kids are asking all these questions. And I've noticed all around the internet, reactors are saying, and I agree with this. A lot of people didn't know as much as they thought about Rosa Parks, and so they felt like it made them. It informed them. It educated them. A couple of British people mentioned that they didn't quite buy how Graham could know so much about Rosa Parks because it isn't actually a normal standard thing that they teach in British schools. So, but other than that, that's a nitpick.
He explained that though.
That's not
the wife. His wife is
that's right,
color, and she was the one who told him.
That's right. I forgot about that.
I have to say I'm gonna have to. I do have to agree with that a bit. It still seemed like a bit of a stretch, but I will. But here's the thing on that. That was probably the least of my complaints, and the reason why is because that's a Doctor Who thing. If you've been watching Doctor Who for the past 11 seasons, they do that a lot.
Yeah, there's some conveniences.
They will. Right. They'll take liberties with the realities like that. I mean, I remember it was the specials, the Tenet specials, I think it was, where this where they were with Obama, and Obama was like Jesus in those episodes where Obama's coming out with his new economic plan. It's going to save the world. I'm like, settle down. I like him. I like him too. But geez, I mean,
yeah, I know.
And they get it's funny how the show tends to, it gets really excited about a lot of, how do I say, like American perspectives. I say like that. It's like there's a bit of a skew. Their perspective of us as opposed how we view things here sometimes. And it's in this case, that's harmless. I had no problem with it at all. So that's fine.
Also, it was co-written. Chris Tim. I should have wrote her name down, but she's a black woman who co-wrote it. That was cool that they got a black woman too. I keep wanting to say African American, but they're not American, so it doesn't apply. So I thought that was cool that they did that. And there's a lot. This whole series has been great on the little details. It harkens back to some stuff from Classic Who. It's very reminiscent of Classic Doctor Who. I know, Carlos, that you didn't start with Classic Who. You sort of knew Who. But for me, it was, and Shawn, I believe you used to watch Classic Who. It has a lot of similar
I did.
Oh, you didn't? I thought you did.
No, my connection to classic Doctor Who was when I was a little kid, and I used to used to pop up on PBS once in a while, and that was about my only.
Okay,
thing.
yeah. I started like that too, but then actually, my introduction to Doctor Who was a Marvel comic. So that was cool.
That's neat.
Yeah, they even well, anyways. But this episode was, I couldn't believe how, I said this last time, but I couldn't believe how far they went. And putting Yaz, this is the first time that, like in the older episodes, if they had someone of color, it was glossed over, because they treated it more like, no, that's too much for family viewing, to really talk about how Martha's black and keep pointing it out. Although with Bill, they did kind of go there, especially in that Roman episode, and a couple other ones where her color was factored in. And I remember now, the one with the ice monster and the bottom of the ice monster in the 1800s, and the doctor ended up punching that guy out who was treating Bill with disrespect for her skin color. And but that was that was probably the second deepest one where they went into the racist thing, but it was not like the whole episode. But this one, I couldn't believe how far they went. I was so impressed that they did this, and putting Brian and Yaz, the two people of color, in the companion crew, and putting them in their lives are in danger. In Alabama in that time period, you might as well have been surrounded by Daleks. I mean, that's who's more dangerous, that every single person around you in Alabama or the Dalek. And to me, that was what made it more interesting too, is because they just casually, go through time and hey, let's check it out, not realizing where they were, and that was the wrong time period to be gallivanting around with a group like that. I thought that was awesome, the way they addressed that, made it something. How Yaz and Ryan actually talked about, even in 2018, it's still happening, but it was even worse in America during this time period because you literally had no rights yet, and people did things and got away with it. So that was really powerful. Like Carlos said, it's a powerful episode. And then I didn't mind. Some people mind this, some people don't. I liked the little sort of PowerPoint thing she did showing what happens to Rosa at the end. Because if you're going to do an informative, educated episode, you might as well top it off with the cherry, where the young viewers who don't know much about Rosa Parks or anything at all, this is a bad thing that happened, but this is what ends up happening later, and you top it off with her getting that with Clinton and everything. I thought that was cool. Using the frame of the Doctor educating her companions about the future fate of Rosa Parks. So I have to give it a 10. I've never seen Doctor Who go there. I thought the performances were incredible. I will address the bad guy though. It doesn't take a 10 to a 9 for me, but he served a purpose. I think he will probably come back. I didn't mind the bad guy. I thought it was interesting that they used they brought back the Storm Break, whatever it's called, the prison there that River Song.
Oh, the prison, yeah.
Yeah, that was the same prison, and he has a vortex manipulator and all that. I think they were just trying to point out that racism will probably always exist at some point, even in the future. It's unfortunate. They're not being like Star Trek, where they're over optimistic. They're just saying, no matter how society evolves, there's always going to be a few that are going to be like that. I think that's just
but that's such a my only issue with that is that that's fine as far as it goes, but it doesn't go far enough in terms of developing a fully believable villain. And the thing was that it was starting to look like he was going to be a really interesting villain until suddenly we're out of time and he wasn't. So, and he literally was out of time. So I just felt that it was a missed opportunity.
I do like the way that Ryan got to finally shoot something, hit it, and he wasn't even killing anybody. He was like, after that last episode, and he actually made he didn't have to kill him. He just made him go away till who knows what other time period he can be a racist in. And we know it's the past, so we don't know how far back. Maybe the Civil War. That'd be an interesting follow-up to this. So I mean, I remember the Legends of Tomorrow episodes whenever they would, and you mentioned Timeless last week, Shawn. Those types of shows that are always meeting someone famous that they have to help.
What I like about see, this is the problem. One of the big problems I have and I've been trying to wrestle with this because my opinion is that first and foremost, this episode didn't go far enough in general across the board. We're Timeless. What I gotta give Timeless credit for is they don't give a fuck. I mean, they will every single episode that they've gone back in time for, where and you know they've addressed this issue head on. And not only that, if they do not care about, you know, they go there knowing that there's going to be changes to the timeline, and basically what they just try to do is mitigate how bad it's going to be.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean,
and the problem
Doctor
with this
Who.
whole one of the main problems with this whole episode was I've seen this episode before. I saw it in the theater. I saw it in 1985. I saw it, and it involved a DeLorean. It involved a guy, crazy doctor with white hair, and a 17-year-old kid. It was called Back to the Future because that's pretty much what this premise was. It was lining everything up so the timeline didn't change at all. And
Doctor Who's always
to
been
me,
like that, though.
this was particularly over the top, and the you know I have quite a few problems with this episode, and let me preface this by saying that I didn't hate it, I enjoyed it. It just was not as good as I had expected it to be, and I'll go down the list here. If we're gonna talk about the villain,
Oh, I'll go with you this time. I was going to go to Sun, but she has a lot to say that would probably be better to wait for the end because she's got something. You'll see. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, okay, let's start. I do want to start with the villain because the villain for this whole episode was pointless. I'm loath to start comparing. I don't want to compare it to Vincent and the Doctor.
We didn't need the villain. I kind of agree.
It's not the same episode. However, I will say this: that Vincent and the Doctor handled the monster of the week. I felt perfectly. It was almost like an afterthought. It's like, and that's the thing. You either go into it with both feet and really flesh out your villain for an episode like this, or you go, okay, it's just to move the plot along. The problem with the villain in this episode is they got it stuck in the middle, and whereas they didn't really flesh him out, they introduced him, didn't really flesh him out, and it took so much time away from focusing on the Rosa Parks historical aspect of this, and I felt it did a disservice.
He was just a plot device for them to have an excuse to start looking around.
He was, but he was so there was so much time focused on him, and considering how dull and milquetoast he wound up being at the end, it was like, okay, we wasted all that time in this episode on this dope just to send him away. And without even really fleshing out or having, here's the thing about a good villain. Look, what I love about a good villain is your ability to sympathize with a good villain. I've always felt that that's what makes the best villain. It's like it's like when you talk about, like, for example, Deep Space Nine. It's like, who do you hate the most on Deep Space Nine? 9 times out of 10, people are going to say Kai Wynn. And the reason you hate Kai Wynn is because of the performance that Louise Fletcher gave and the way the character was written, which is just a testament to the writing. Whereas this
she has a lot in common with. You're right. She was like Thanos in a way. You can sympathize because she and Thanos agree. We kind of believe what they were doing.
I at the end of Infinity War, I was like hashtag Team Thanos. I mean, seriously, he made sense to me. but that's I mean, that's
he was sympathetic.
He was, and there was. This guy was nothing. He was just like, he was a filler, and it drove me crazy because, it was filler that took away from the Rosa Parks story. And another huge problem I had with this was that they focus on the mythology of Rosa Parks as opposed to the facts of Rosa Parks. This story was not accurate at all. Okay, Rosa Parks
I've heard different things about that, but people's opinions on how accurate it was.
Well, she wasn't just she was a lifelong activist, and had been
I mean, they depicted her as being part of, an organized group of people. I mean,
right, but it's the sitting on the bus that that was more of a planned event than it was just her feet were tired. It was much more than that. I mean,
right, but they also, to be fair, they did say that as well, that it wasn't that she was just tired. It was something that she'd been planning since that first time they depicted in the 40s, and that happened to be the right day because of the number of people.
Oh, that's right, because they started off
the bus that particular day.
But the bus driver, the thing, and here's another problem: the bus driver was irrelevant. The bus driver part of that was irrelevant to the story, and that took a ton of time away from it too. My feelings on this is that the way the story was presented, I felt that it diminished. It served to diminish how important Rosa Parks was to the civil rights movement in this country. In other words, they should have done a lot more, in my opinion. And I felt the episode felt rushed to me. I felt that it was just trying to move things along, and there was things in there that were unnecessary. I mean, honestly, I got to be honest. That whole scene, those two scenes, or two subplots here: the subplot of the villain and the subplot of getting the bus driver to the bus. That was the Canto bike scene of this episode.
You just reminded me too. Did you notice that Mr. Tardis in his review? I don't know if you know who he is. He said something that was kind of funny. If he said, like, when she was when using that marker or write on the wall, it was almost like she was throwing, like, forcing the story down. All right, kids watching this episode, are you paying attention? This is like she was being your teacher. He was like, he said it was fine, but it was kind of down your throat on that one.
Well, it wasn't even so much down your throat. Here's what the reason, why that was done, because they got to the end of the episode and they realized the same thing. We didn't give much exposition for this. Is what happened. They had to wrap this episode up. Okay.
Yeah,
and
that's
this is
point.
like. I talk about this with Voyager, Star Trek Voyager, all the time. And look, if you're going to talk about Doctor Who, I think invariably you're going to start talking about Star Trek a lot. There's a lot of similarities between the two shows for many reasons. But
yeah, we talked about one of them last week.
Well, right, exactly. And this is the problem with Voyager. And I don't hate any Star Trek, and I do like Voyager, but I recognize that it was a seriously flawed show. And one of the biggest problems with Voyager is that a lot of times they had these great ideas for stories, but the problem is these stories should have gone for maybe 2-3 episode arcs, but they tried to squeeze them all into one episode. So you get about through a 43 minute episode, you get about 30 minutes into it, and then they got to wrap it up, and it's just so freaking rushed.
I really don't feel that this episode would have been served by having it be a two-parter. To be honest with you,
I think I agree. I agree actually with both of you. I agree that there were some tangents they didn't need to go down necessarily, but also I don't feel like they needed two episodes to tell the story. I just think they weren't as economical as they could have been.
Yes, I think I definitely think that's the case.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I was thinking to myself, though, if they were going to go down all those different avenues, then put into 2 episodes. And this is the thing, they used to do this with New Who. They used to give us these double episodes pretty frequently, or these arcs, as they were. And they haven't really done that in a while, and I kind of miss it. I mean, it's nice to stretch a story out over a couple of episodes, but
yeah, I should know how to point this season about not doing stuff like that, but because he only has 10 episodes, so. And the Christmas special.
I forgot. There's only 10 episodes this season. That's right.
Well, and the Christmas special. So that's.
Well, I mean, I agree, Carl. This story could have been done, I think, a little bit more economic, a little bit more efficiently if they had, cut some of this fat off. I think the most effective, and these are the parts. See, here's the thing. Look, if you haven't been able to tell in the time you've known me through things, I'm an emotional guy. Okay, and are
you? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, I cried during Star Wars. You kidding me? Still, okay.
I'm like that too. Especially after a couple of beers.
Right. I can't even watch the death scene in Wrath of Khan with Spock. So, spoilers, she does die at the end. Anyway, but The most effective scenes in that episode for me. And by the way, I agree with what Carlos was saying about the fine actress they got to portray Rosa Parks.
She was on Doctor Who once
outstanding.
before. She was in that episode with the sun creature that was inhabited David Tennant's body, 42 or whatever it was called.
Oh, okay, cool. Well,
Yeah,
I didn't even realize that.
Well, I didn't know either until someone pointed it out in a podcast and showed a picture.
Nice,
So.
nice little bit of trivia. Excellent. But yeah, she was great. And the performances were all great. They're all fine. And,
Well, some of the British. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say the main cast. It's the portrayals of the Americans that were making me roll my eyes a lot.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing.
But here's the thing: is the most effective parts for me were when they were like you brought this up, and when our two new young companions, I'm forgetting their names already.
Ryan and Yaz.
Ryan and Yaz, when they were discussing, their own experiences with contemporary racism, and I thought that was the most that brought tears to my eyes, and that's where I think as much of the problems I have with this episode, that's where it redeemed it for me. Was that they were able to do that? Because look, if you can hit me like that, okay, then you did something right. That's what.
I gotta say this real quick. My favorite line in the whole series, in all of the season so far, was Ryan when she goes, "We don't serve Negroes here," and he says, "Good, because I don't eat them."
That was pretty funny. That was pretty clever.
I actually liked the little thing that they did to sort of illustrate the absurdity of the Jim Crow laws back then, and that was when Yaz got to sit in the white seat because they thought she was Mexican.
Yeah, she even asked the doctor, where should she sit or something like that. I think I recall.
Yeah, and basically they said, well, they're not making you move, so I guess being Mexican is okay.
Here's a question. Here's a question to bake your noodle. What if she was Chinese? Or any flavor of Asian?
Yeah,
who knows?
Who knows?
Exactly.
Because that racism existed on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Well, look, hey, I think we've all come to the conclusion here that racism is madness. No, and it's absurd, no matter how you try to wrap your head around it.
Yep, and the other than the woman who played Rosa Parks, a lot of the a lot of the aggressive white male Southern characters, the British actors, their American accents weren't that good. I was trying to just hurt, stop talking, just stop. I get the point. You have a Southern.
No. Some of those were actually pretty damn spot on. Let me tell you, as someone who lives in the South,
they were kind of all over the place. But
I know the drawl is because I've been down. I've lived down south too.
Yeah, it was not consistent. I agree. It's not. Some of them were good, but
there was a couple of them where I could feel like the British in the accent.
There was a lot of inconsistency. I agree.
Yeah.
And the other problem I have here too is that was obviously not filmed in Alabama. And
right.
No, you know where it was filmed? South Africa.
South Africa. That's what I thought.
Was it really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
I noticed that what they did was they kept using the same area at different angles throughout the episode is what they kept doing. So it threw me off. Probably a British audience wouldn't have thrown them off, but for an American, who's familiar with these types of small towns, medium-sized towns in this country.
Oh, thank you for reminding me. I got a story to tell right after you get done.
Okay.
I would be upset if I forgot to add it.
Well, it was just kind of it was a little off-putting that it seemed like a set. You know what I mean? It didn't really have a feel of a real place. So but I mean, again, minor quibble. That's one of the things that most people in the audience for their main audience is their European, the UK audience. I can see why that wasn't a major priority. But I mean, I think I've said pretty much everything I can about this episode as far as my take on it. Like I said, it was effective in some areas. I thought it was grossly ineffective in other areas.
Well, what was your out of 10? What would you give it?
I would give it probably I'll be generous. I'll give it a 7.
Okay.
And that's being real generous because I was borderline 6. But like I said, that I'm giving it an extra point for making me cry in those two scenes. So
before
so you get my drink my tears points. So that's what you get.
All right. Well, before I jump over to Son, I'm going to tell one quick anecdote that happened to me. And I think I told you about this, Son. Back when I was in the Army, I think it was around 1994 at the time that this happened. I was on leave with a friend of mine, a black guy who was a friend of mine, and he wanted me to come. Hey, we decided to take leave at the same time. He was going to bring me down to Arkansas, Little Rock, to meet his family, and we could hang out and party for the weekend or whatever. We were driving from Texas, so Fort Hood, so it wasn't that far. Well, we had to stop at a gas station, and this is 1995. He got a shotgun pulled on him, and he said that, I don't care if you're almost out of gas, go find a different gas station. And he used some uncool words to follow up with that shotgun, which by itself was bad enough. But that stuff still happens in some places in the South. So that wasn't that long ago. So. But and one last thing too. The episode when it aired, I thought this was a neat little trivia. That incident on that airline recently, where they had where the black woman was asked to give up her seat after the guy was racistly screaming at her on that plane, that happened. That aired the same day it happened. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. The whole Ryanair issue. It was crazy. I was thinking about that. It's like
it was the same day that they aired the Rosa Parks episode on Doctor Who. So I'm thinking that was strangely poetic. I mean,
Yep.
All right. So I know, Son, I know you had wanted to say some things. So let's hear it, Son.
Well, okay. So let me get some quick stuff out of the way. Okay, the episode did not need to have the villain in it at all whatsoever.
I agree.
You could literally save a whole bunch of time that you could use for exposition if the villain was not in this episode. Just have the TARDIS just shut down and let you be a part of this history. There you go. There's the whole setup for the episode. But that out of the way, how is it that Ryan didn't tell anybody that he met Dr. King?
Maybe it happened off camera. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's like, okay, you've been following Rosa Parks. Dude, you literally just met Dr. King. How are you not spazzing out to your friends about this?
That is a good point.
Okay, so that and the other thought that I had, George, was your greaser companion for
Jim, yeah.
For Ambrosia. The only thing running through my head is, maybe we can rewrite your greaser companion to be the son of this dude, so that he's trying to redeem everything his father was wrong.
Nah, I'm all set with that. Because he's a character I'm playing. He already has a strong backstory because he's
I know. I understand that. And we don't need to explain it in this.
But I was thinking the same thing because he dressed. I have a 3D model on the Ambrosia site, and I have him wearing a jacket just like that, and he looks a lot like him too. So that was interesting. But it was. By the way, you've been around Alabama, right? Wouldn't it be kind of hot for a leather jacket like that?
Do not live in Alabama, no.
Oh, have you been through there?
I live in the South. Yes, specifically. Yeah, I live in Arkansas. So
well, that was late November though too. It's going to be a little.
Yeah, that time of year.
That's true. I can remember. I could have worn a jacket like that even in Texas. So in the winter.
But yeah, no, I see things a little bit closer to where Shawn sees things. Because I've lived here in the South all of my life, and I may not be as educated as some of the older gentlemen in this room, but there's so much that should have been explained in this episode that could have been explained if the villain wasn't even there. Things like how Rosa Parks. It wasn't just that Rosa Parks had planned this. It's that Rosa Parks was a mischief maker. That whole 12 years ago scene thing that starts this whole thing off, that's one incident of over a dozen of her doing that over the years, and all with different people on the bus lines. And most of the times, people just, the bus driver just let it go, except for that bus driver.
Right, that's why you kept saying it had to be that bus driver.
Right, and nobody explained that, and I can't remember his name for the life of me because I'm terrible with names, but still, he was the most vile and racist of the bus drivers for the whole company. The actions that she had planned, she had done for years. She'd literally just been mapping out who would be the most willing to react. And it was him, which is why she took his bus all the time.
Did you what did you think of trying to remember what character? One of the details I liked, I don't know if you noticed this. Did you catch on when they first said Artron energy? Because that's always been a thing for Doctor Who. I was like, this. I was hoping it was going to be another Time Lord, but whatever.
It didn't. It wasn't important. It shouldn't have been important.
I totally agree.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit there. I think they did need a villain. I think they needed some reason to end up there that makes sense within the Who universe.
We've literally had Doctor Who where the TARDIS literally just takes the Doctor where he needs to go, now she, for no other reason than the Doctor needs to be there. Well, there you go. There's your explanation.
But here's the thing. If kind of like what Carla said, if they had they were trying to get home to 2018, so the TARDIS, they needed a plot device for the TARDIS to purposely take them there, or else they would have had no reason.
Without a villain, their history would have proceeded as it did, right? I mean, you had to have a villain. You had to have something throw it off or threaten the way
Unless it was
went originally.
Loop.
Yeah, I don't think so, though. I mean,
that's
overcomplicated. That's overworking the plumbing.
Well, not only that, but you got to go by. It's not so much time travel, is all theoretical, anyways. But Doctor Who has some consistencies in how it works in their world, in their universe. So I thought they were fairly consistent in that sense. They became part of the fixed point situation, I guess, as a doctor would say. That's what made it more tragic to me, was that when they realized they have to let this awful thing happen and make sure it does happen, and that was their mission. And that woman I was telling you about, the black woman with the little kids, they asked her why they had to let her get arrested, and she goes, one of her little kids he says, but she's being arrested. That's not good. And she said, well, in this case, it was because it led to all the changes that have happened since then. So that's why the doctor and them had to let it happen. It was a bad thing. It was necessary. So, but that was interesting. I thought that they did that. They were forced to allow something bad to happen. I mean, I think they've done that before. I can't think off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's been done before. I just can't. The way it happened here was after all the things Ryan and Yaz were forced to go through with the racism. I think it gave it kind of it gave it a peak as far as the payoff, as far as the emotional.
George, that's a common trope on Doctor Who that we, and not just Doctor Who, but many shows that deal with time travel.
Well, Vincent and the Doctor, though, was a little different. Oh, another thing I like is that they did not ever reveal to Rosa that they were from another time, and they didn't take her into the TARDIS and all that stuff. I like that.
Right. Yeah, they get played through, right? Well, but Vincent in the Doctor, though, even, I mean, he was very clear to, this was the struggle with the Doctor and Amy throughout the whole episode, is that I can't save him. There's nothing we can do to save him, because she wanted things to, because he was, such a wonderful human being, and he was so troubled, and just, and it's just it broke her heart. It broke our heart to watch, and there, he made
In
it
the
very
case
clear,
of Vincent the
there's
Doctor,
nothing
it
we
was
can
necessary. It was necessary for the story. That's what made it so powerful, was him showing him that his life does matter, and he becomes one of the greatest things in history. That was, and then the actor's reaction. That was a total exception to that trope, where I felt that was necessary. With Rosa, I was glad they didn't do it just to
the
do
trope
it.
I'm really speaking, the trope I'm really speaking of is this idea that you can't interfere with the natural course of history and events, and that even if you try, that you're still not going to be able to do it. That's not
Waters of Mars.
What's that?
Waters of Mars.
Waters of Mars.
Exactly. Yep. I mean,
because he saves them all, and the captain still winds up committing suicide.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, like they've always pointed out, Doctor
the
Who,
unintended consequences.
You got your fixed points, and you've got your some things in time are fluid. And
I do you remember the I forgot the name. There was an arc in season 1 with why am I drawing complete blank on who was the season 1 Doctor from New Who?
Oh, Chris Rexon.
Thank you.
Yeah, Christopher Eccleston.
Right. And it was the World War II arc, and they with the kids with the gas masks.
Oh yeah, mummy, you're my mummy. Yep.
Right, and the very end of the arc, he says, where he went and basically saved everybody, and his line was, "Just this once, Rose, everybody lives."
Right,
because that's not what usually happens on this show, and that's not what would happen for the next 10 seasons following.
David Tennant's Pompeii episode convinced him to go back and save at least one person or family. I mean,
right, one for one family, but can't save them all. I mean, that's kind of been the Doctor's, and that's kind of been, his burden to bear.
Right.
And what a burden that you encounter all these people that are you along the way, they are truly wonderful, and they're gonna die, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it to stop it. So, but that's why I always like that first season episode. Just once. It's one of the few times that I literally get up and cheer when he says that. I just love that episode. So.
Well, they also did that with the Justice League movie where Batman's trying to explain the Flash. Flash didn't know who to try to save because so many people, and he said, "Just pick someone, pick one person, just do it." Because it's the same idea. You can't save them all. Save one person. At least save someone.
I want to hear what else Son has to say.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Son,
you,
did you
Carlos.
have? Well, I'm literally sitting on the edge of my seat.
Me too, actually.
So is she, because she doesn't. She'll fall to the floor.
I love Son's insight because she agrees so much with me. I'm just kidding, but no, I really appreciate hearing what Son has to say.
Well, the other thing is all of the little piecemeal things that are dropped as like the having Dr. King and their group at Rosa's house. Those meetings, like with what happened with the SNCC organization and those three students who were trying to get black people to register to vote and were lynched because of it in the South, here in the South. And then hearing about Emmett Till. Yeah. What's interesting is in the episode itself, we hear about Rosa's life, about how it wasn't until the 90s that she got the recognition for what she had done. And I believe it was also in the 90s that we found out that the lady who had testified that Emmett Till had sexually assaulted her, which caused the mob to lynch Till like they had, was actually it was another case of false accusations. It was a case of false accusations.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting. See, learn.
That's true. That came out really, really late, like decades later.
Right, and I'm like, I feel bad for not having mentioned the Emmett Till part because I mentioned it when I had my discussion on my own Facebook page about this, and how it was. I it really it bothered me how much that the line about Emmett Till in the beginning of the episode was just a throwaway line. That is such a seminal and pivotal moment
I
in
didn't even
that
know who it
era.
was before people online started saying,
It's one of the most horrifying crimes in American history. And if you go to the Wikipedia page on it, his mother, he was beaten so badly, disfigured so badly that he didn't look human anymore.
right, but she wanted the open
And
casket to show
Yeah,
her.
so everybody, yep,
yeah, even when he was embalmed, they couldn't get the swelling down to embalm him
right.
properly, which just, I mean, he was that disfigured after they had killed him. So
And you
yeah,
compare
that
that
yeah.
you compare that to the before picture. He's just a beautiful, beautiful little boy, and it's so heartbreaking. And like I said, that's a disservice the episode did. You don't bring up Emmett Till unless you really plan to explain the gravity of the Emmett Till murder, and that's because look again, most Americans don't know that and don't know the Emmett Till story. I'm not really, I can't really count on that their core audience is going to know who Emmett Till is. So I mean, it just, like I said, it was a disservice. And again, it's like you said, son. I mean, there are just so many things that ate up this episode that that could have made this go from a good episode to a great episode.
Let's
So
let Son finish it.
Oh, I don't know that adding exposition. As a writer, I've never heard anyone successfully make the case for more exposition making a story better. I think we typically look to find ways to not have exposition or to dispense information without having to rely on exposition.
I completely agree. Yep.
Well, see, here's a way they could have handled it. Here's a way they could have handled it. If they had cut out a little bit more of the villain being the villain for just being the villain's sake, they could have expanded the meeting scene to have a newspaper cutting of the open casket of Emmett Till and Ryan asking, "Who is that?" That's Till.
For all
what happened?
There might have been a deleted scene with more to it.
Well, that's the only problem with it. I agree with Son on that, but I think that's that's the fine line you walk when you're on at 8 p.m. on a Sunday night. That's where you walk into tough territory. But you know what? I would have said, "Fuck it, take a chance." I mean, seriously, especially in these times. Let's have that conversation.
At this point, this has probably been the furthest that even American television has really gone in showing this off.
What would you give the episode out of 10, Son?
I would definitely give it a solid 7.5.
And was there anything else you want to say? I think we keep interrupting you because we don't know that you're not done.
Well, I mean, no. I mean, there's literally just so much here that needed to be said that was just kind of just frosted over on a cake.
Perfect analogy.
All right. Well, it was definitely an episode people are talking about. I told you guys this last week too, but I'll mention it again. And Son's a member of that group too. We're in a Facebook group where I'm an admin. One for spoilers called Cult of Skaro. The other one's the Last of the Time Lords. But we had put up disclaimers that were pinned to make sure that, and it happened anyways. But no misogyny, no sexist remarks, dissing on Jodie just because she's a woman and all that stuff. We won't tolerate that. I never thought that I would have to pin up something. We ended up doing it afterwards, where we actually had to have the conversation. By the way, after the Rosa episode comes out, no racist remarks, but there was, and it was crazy. And I had to, kick some people out. And then I had made a post and had to say, I think we didn't think we had to say it, but I guess apparently we do because, we gave people the benefit of the doubt. It never even occurred, but guess what? Racism's still real. So that's one message the episode makes very clear. But everybody knows that.
Well,
all right.
My concern was, you see, here's the thing. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. The jerks out there who have been making racist remarks about the episode, or there have been, we don't need this politically correct crap and all. I'm starting to believe that none of them saw the episode, because
they don't like the idea of it being a social justice agenda or something.
It's just troll nonsense. I mean, who even if it is, who cares? I mean, look, even if it is, and you really don't like social justice, you're not a fan of social SJW, social justice.
Well, again, whatever. It's tribalism. It's peak tribalism at this point. It's their side versus our side versus that other side.
It's just, I mean, it's when it comes down to your entertainment, you're really letting it bother you that much. I mean, look, it's like people. I keep seeing this come up where, back to the tribalism with Star Trek, and these memes about, how can you possibly be a conservative and be a Star Trek fan? I know plenty of conservatives that are Star Trek fans.
Me too.
Your entertainment really should be a completely separate animal from your politics. And I don't mean I don't look at racism as being politics. That's a different breed altogether. But I don't see how people get so wrapped up in this from their TV shows and their movies. Just
it's moral tribalism. That's all it is.
It's getting more intense.
But what's underneath that? Because I think it makes perfect sense why they get so upset. Because it literally, I mean, this is called identity politics.
You're breaking up a little bit, Carlos.
Because I said this, it's called identity politics for a reason, because people's identities are wrapped up into these things, and they have an entire mythology about who they are and their place in the world and their family's place in the world, and their position in society and its place in the world, that unfortunately the facts have a tendency to kind of show as often being false or misleading. And when that happens, it is perceived by them to be an attack on who they are and what their life means. And that's why you see the level of vitriol that you see. I mean, people aren't just sitting back, behind their keyboards, twirling their mustaches and going, "Oh, I hate these people, so I'm going to troll them." I mean, there's reasons behind this, and they're valid reasons. They're not correct reasons, but I understand why. I mean, I don't think we have to throw up our hands and feel like we can't understand why people are behaving this way. I think people behave in this extreme fashion when their very identity is at threat. And you see that in situations like this. You see it in situations with Star Trek or fandom or whatever. Whenever anyone makes an issue part of who they are and that is threatened, they lash out. That's what happens.
Well, that's the biggest problem here, is that yes, that happens and they lash out, but they lash out and then nobody wants to meet them in the middle anymore because they lash out all the time.
I also feel that the extra reason that there was a lot of outrage about this episode from Who fans is that first they had to accept that from some of them's point of view, social justice warriors won out and they got a female doctor. So then they had to grumblingly, grudgingly accept that, and then you throw on top of that this episode right behind the female doctor. I think that was, for some of those people, it was just a little too much all at once, as far as...
Okay. As much as we'd like to talk about the misogyny and the racism, I need to throw in that I've actually had a few people on the LGBT side of this go, "Why aren't there any gay people in this? This is the worst Who ever." And I'm like, what the fuck? Can you not just let a thing happen? Can we not have a conversation about stuff? Hell no, we can't. I am always under attack. And it's like, and that's why nobody wants to be around you.
Definitely a lot going on with this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you on this point, son, because and I say this as an LGBT person, um, this isn't a show that has historically stepped away or refused to show people from that community as characters, and good characters. I don't think they need to do it 100% of the time. They do it when they think it makes sense, and they haven't shied away from doing it. I think they get a pass on this one because it gets tiresome to see it in your face every single time. It just doesn't. When the story is great for it and it helps further the story, put it in. Don't shy away from it. Go for it strongly. They've done that time after time on this series. I don't see where anyone has any call to start casting stones.
They've also
So
never confirmed.
what we're getting at here is that do it if inclusiveness for the sake of bringing the story together, but don't shoehorn people in just for the sake of doing it. Is that what we're getting at here?
Well, for all we know, Ryan or Yaz could be gay, or both of them, because they've never really shown that they're straight so far. I mean, people think that they like each other just from these in the subtext, but I've never heard either one of them mention a boyfriend or a girlfriend or anything. So any of that could change. We know Graham's was married to a woman, so that's different. But those two, we don't know. It could turn out both of them are gay for all we know. But we'll see.
Well, I mean, it'll happen when it needs to happen.
When it needs to happen, yeah.
In the first episode or the second episode or even the third
Right,
episode.
right.
It happens when it makes sense for it to happen, and I don't hold it against them because they haven't yet. I mean, it's just give these folks a chance. They're getting there.
What did you guys think?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things of if it's there, let it happen when it happens. You don't have to check the box right from the get-go. That's stupid.
The part where where Graham puts his arm around the doctor, pretends it's his wife or something or whatever, for the police officer. That look in the doctor's face when she's looking down at his hand. I took a screenshot of it and I shared it on that group I mentioned because it's one of the funniest moments so far. And I like how Graham was respectful. The second that cop was gone, he pulled his hand right off. I thought that was kind of neat. Showed he's a gentleman. He was just doing it because he had to think quick. I just thought it was a neat little moment. But Chibnall did promise the doctor would not be getting involved with any of her male or female companions on this series. So, I wasn't expecting anything going.
Well, I mean,
that leaves open the relationship with Missy.
Or unless Missy regenerates again, she was dying into a man again. Who knows?
But the character, I mean. The character is always it's always transcended that. I mean, at least during this modern era, it's been about everything but that. There was the whole thing. I mean, and they've done this with pretty much all the companions. They set it up as this tension, and the will he, the will he, won't he, will what I mean? Is it going to happen ever? And it never does. The only time it did was when there was the 10 clone. That was the only time we ever saw it. And they went to a different dimension, so a different universe altogether. So I mean,
right, yeah, that's true.
I just wouldn't expect it at this point.
Actually, no. The Paul McGann movie. He had romance in the Paul McGann movie with the one-shot companion.
I've never seen that. I think it's actually on YouTube, and you've got to see that. I get about 5 minutes into it, and I put it. I make the mistake of putting it on as I'm going to sleep, and I get 5 minutes into it, and I doze off. Nothing gets filmed. It's just my bad timing.
It's good. It's the one that our mutual friend Terry Lynn Shaw. I remember when I showed her the mini episode where Paul McGann returned to regenerate into the War Doctor. She stopped watching Doctor Who back in the Tom Baker era, but she did love that Paul McGann TV movie when it came on in 1996, and so she was posting it on her Facebook. So that was cool. But he is a great doctor, and his audio stuff is awesome. So you definitely got to check it out. You're doing yourself a disservice. Also, the Master played by Eric Roberts was actually he was a little over the top, but it was worth it. But yeah, he did have a romance in that movie with the girl, so it wasn't the first time with Tennant. But yeah, we should probably wrap up.
Am I right though that movie was supposed to be a backdoor pilot
Yeah, no,
for
it
an
was supposed to be a
American
series.
version of Who?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
American produced, but with cooperation with the BBC.
Understood, but
yeah, they had
it's like American produced shows.
Well, you know what they were going to do?
It's a goddamn necessity that you're going to have a romance in there. So
not just that. The Doctor, Paul McGann has his audition on YouTube, and it reveals plots that were going to happen if it got picked up. The guy from the Odyssey there, Odysseus, is the Doctor's father. A lot of they had a plot where many of the Greek heroes were actually Time Lords that decided to live back then, and then the Doctor was and the Doctor's mom was human, and they never said it again after that he was half human. But Peter Capaldi hinted at it with the whole hybrid thing, and that's why that when what's her face me or whatever her name is Ashildar, when she was saying stuff about. Are you half human? Are you the hybrid? Are you half human? And he had no comment about that. Those were hints from what Paul McGann said in the TV movie, where he comes right out and says, "I'm half human on my mother's side." But that doesn't mean.
So what you're saying is that the Paul McGann movie was the Doctor Who version of Assignment Earth.
Russell T Davies said that he says, well, just because it was said he said that in the movie doesn't mean it's true. It was it was going to be true if they picked up that series. But what they've kind of been hinting at in Moffat's era is that maybe it's true, maybe it's not.
Hello, did River Song teach us nothing? What's the first rule of the Doctor?
I'm so glad Moffat is gone because there are no more lies.
The Doctor lies.
There are no more lies.
I'm loving Jodie as the Doctor. Her performance she's really finding her feet as far as her personality. I love the scene where the bad guy's choking her and she knows he can't do it, so she's kind of like laughing in his face as he's trying to choke her out. There was something about that, the way she handled that scene that I liked. I was kind of hoping she would kick his butt with her Venusian Aikido there, because
she doesn't do that.
What do you mean, kick his butt?
Yeah, she doesn't need
That's
to.
That's not the Doctor's way.
Well, she didn't because
the Doctor is defensive.
But she that's why she said she liked Venusian Aikido, because it was a passive self-defense thing. But anyways, I don't know. I would have I thought it would have been neat if she did something to him, but she didn't have to, and she knew that. That goes back to her saying your brain, because she knew he couldn't do that with that his neural implant thing. So
well, here's the thing: if in 3 years if we get a new Doctor and Doctor regenerates as Steven Seagal, we're fucked. That's all I can say.
Oh my god! All right, you guys. Carlos, where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter at @cpedroza. I'm also on Twitter at Axmonitor, and I write at axmonitor.com, and I'm also on the Axmonitor Facebook group.
All that will also be in the link below when it's on YouTube. Son, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/SunsealFan. That's where I post all of my shows that I've been on. Yay!
And how about you, Shawn?
Pretty much on the Axe Monitor Facebook group that I am admin along with Carlos. But I am thinking about, after my wonderful experience with you guys, bringing my blog back to life, my TV blog back to life. And
yeah, do it. We'll link it.
Rebranding it. Yeah. Yep,
we'll keep linking
rebranding it. Going for more of a geek centric type thing, and we can link this all together, get all our podcasts together and stuff, and have a good time with it. Absolutely.
There are going to be some changes that I told Carlos about earlier, and I think you know about it too, Shawn. I'll tell you after. I'm not going to go into details, but there's going to be some changes as far as some affiliations we're going to be doing with another party. That once we've figured out if we're doing it and what form it's going to take. We'll definitely announce it on the show. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me. Oh, and of course, I'm George. Chooch99 is my nickname online, but you can find me here pretty much. And yeah, so all right. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, George.